Hey people, it's Junebug here again. This time I'm sitting on the floor. I am trying to record with my phone today, see if it makes any quality difference or whatnot. Because even though we spent fair amounts of money on the actual camera we have, the quality seems to still suck. So we're trying to work that out. We're still working with the lighting, still working with the sound. I did a couple runs and the microphone just wouldn't work with the phone, which I don't know if they're supposed to or not. So I'm going to try to talk as loud as I can without sounding like I'm yelling at you guys. Anyway, so I'm on the floor. Couch is behind me, beautiful photo. Not a stunning background, but it works. So today we are doing another true crime time, because what else do I do by myself? And this is about Johnny Keller. If anyone's heard of him, I had not. Again, I had not heard of this case until I did the research for it. But this happened in April of 1905. Now they don't know exactly what day, just April. And Johnny Keller was 16 at the time of his passing, and this was in St. Paul, Minnesota. So each true crime time case so far has been a different state. We're just making our way around the map. And the small silver lining of this is it's solved, so I guess there's closure when it comes to that. But first we're going to start with a man named William Williams. Yes, that was his real name. Not something he just chose for himself to sound cool. Well, maybe it was. But he was a Cornish miner who was born in 1877 in St. Ives, Cornwall, England. And it's unknown when he came to America, but he settled in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then Johnny Keller, I did the math, was born around 1889. So he was about 15 when he met William Williams. Very redundant name. So they both met in a hospital. I don't know if it was a hospital specifically for this disease or if it was just like in a certain wing, but they both had, I think it's pronounced diphtheria? Diphtheria? I never heard of it before. It's not common now. But basically it's like a throat infection, which you can cough, you get a fever, your neck can swell like a bullfrog. It can affect other parts of your body. Just not a good time. Not a good time. But they both survived this. And they became really close friends because of this. They're like, you got diphtheria, I got diphtheria, let's be friends. So they did, they became friends. Pardon my note flipping. So they became very close because of this in their hospital stay. And then they remained close for the next 2 years. Out of the hospital, of course. They weren't in the hospital for 2 years. And then it says they lived together, but I'm not sure if this meant in the same home. I really don't think it was the same home because Johnny Keller still lived with his parents, it mentioned in another part of it. And also if this is a gay romance, I'm guessing it was very, very, I know it's very, very frowned upon in 1905. But I didn't know if people would question that or just things like that. So I take it as they both lived together in St. Paul. Like William Williams had his own home in St. Paul, and then Johnny Keller lived in St. Paul with his parents. That's how I took it. I really don't believe that anyone would be chill with them getting a home together in St. Paul, especially when Johnny was 16. But things were different. And then they took 2 trips to Winnipeg, Canada, which I thought that was a bit weird that they mentioned that, but it comes into play later, so hold on to your horses. And then Keller's parents, especially his father, was not a fan, did not approve of this relationship. Like, the loveys between the two men. And so they forbid Johnny from seeing or traveling with William Williams anymore, which I feel like that's a common punishment for something when parents don't like it. But William Williams sent letters to Johnny Keller confessing his love. And I say confessing because also in these letters he was threatening him. A quote is, "I want you to believe that I love you now as much as I ever did, and won't be long before we'll be together again." Sounds like love, right? Sounds very sweet. Sounds like a nice relationship. But then another quote from Mr. Williams was, "Keep your promise to me this time, old boy, as it is your last chance. You understand what I mean and should have sense enough to keep your promise." Because in these notes, he really wanted Johnny Keller to come live with him in Winnipeg, Canada. That's where it came in again. Like, Williams just loved Winnipeg, Canada. I don't know why, he just loved it. Canada's nice, I get it. But he wanted Johnny to come be with him in Winnipeg, like they wanted to live there. And then Keller's parents wouldn't let him respond to any of the letters. I believe he was aware that he was getting them, but he wasn't allowed to write back. Which could almost be worse, because you're getting confessions of love from your person or your best friend. It wasn't ever confirmed that they were together, but it just kind of assumed. And that's just hard to know, like, you can't respond even though they love you. And then also seeing the threats, like, Mom, Dad, I feel like I should respond if he's threatening me. Sorry. That was not necessary. So I couldn't find how long the span of these letters were written. I don't know if it was a few months, just 1 month, or like a year, or if it was just like one letter or 2 letters. I don't know, I didn't find that information. But after getting no response after a while, Williams returned to St. Paul in a fit of rage and shot Johnny Keller's mom and then shot Johnny himself. So he shot the man he confessed to loving. Granted, he was also threatening him, so I guess a really love-hate relationship. But yes, Johnny Keller was killed, and he was killed instantly, which I guess is a better way to go than like slowly bleeding out. But he died instantly because he was shot in the back of the head while laying in bed. I think he was asleep. So very cold-blooded murder. Wasn't like a fight between them, just found him. Pew! And then Johnny Keller's mom lived about a week before she passed away from her wound. It didn't say where she was shot. I'm guessing if it was, there's a fuzzy. I'm guessing if it was in today's time period, she probably could have survived with the hospital. Oh my gosh. Because if it's something like the head, the heart, something vital, then I feel like she would have died sooner or instantly. But it could have been just like an infection of the wound. Unfortunately, she passed as well. But if you're wondering, like, what about Johnny's dad? What about him? He just was not home at the time. I don't know if he was at work. I'm going to assume he was at work, or just if they had a farm, just out doing farm stuff. Didn't really see where he was. It just said he wasn't home. Then an interesting thing, which also confuses me about Mr. Williams, is he turned himself in that night. Like, he went to the police station and even gave them the address of where they were, and he said everything he did. And he didn't like try to leave, like he just stayed there. He's like, I did it. So they obviously went to the house, saw he was telling the truth, brought him to trial. And they were trying to accuse him of premeditated murder. Why am I yawning so much? Sorry. But they tried to convict him of premeditated murder. And he pleaded not guilty for this. Like, he knew he murdered him. Like, he admitted it. But he's like, this was not premeditated. Don't you come at me accusing me of that. But he pleaded not guilty by reason of emotional insanity. And And they even had like a psychiatrist or a doctor, or it didn't specify kind of what doctor it was. They had him evaluate Williams, and like the doctor agreed. Like, this man didn't really know why he shot Johnny. He was just loved Johnny, like just had these intense feelings for him and just wanted him to come with him. But he just didn't know what to do. So like he just shot him. That's kind of how the doctor explained it. And that's kind of what Williams was thinking for himself. And Williams also admitted he hadn't slept 3 days prior to the murder. And the day of the murder, he was heavily drinking all day. So not a good combination, just with those two alone. But if you add the emotional insanity part, like, he would have a legit case today, honestly. But his defense was rejected, and he was convicted of murder, which makes sense. He did murder them. But the weird thing about his trial was there were no jurors. They excluded them purposefully. Because this time in Minnesota, they were heavily debating death penalty. Most people didn't want it anymore in Minnesota, and they wanted to abolish it. So they said no jurors, because they knew most of them would not want to give Williams the death penalty. So they got rid of them so they could give him the death penalty. Seems a bit unfair, but that's how it worked, I guess. So he was hung a year later on February 13th of 1906. But when they went to the gallows, I believe they're called the gallows, like, and they're dropping him, you know, they have the rope. The rope had been cut wrong, so when they released the little trapdoor, or whatever it's called, he dropped, but his feet just hit the ground. Like, the rope was too long. So he just went to the ground, like, okay. But instead of just, like, waiting another day or just cutting the rope, because he already was on death row for a year, what's wrong waiting another day? But instead of waiting or fixing the rope, they had 2 police officers, or 3, just hold the rope up. Hold it up for 15 minutes straight until he died. Which seems horrible. It was considered a botched hanging. Makes sense. Just the fact that they couldn't wait one more day. You already waited a year. Like, why? That's just horrible. And for the people watching, because yes, people still like to watch executions back then. But due to his botched hanging, it was actually the reason the death penalty was abolished in Minnesota in 1911. It spawned a huge outrage. Even though he was a murderer, he still had the emotional insanity and everything going on, and they're like, that's still horrible. Like, you're supposed to be professional. It's still your job to be an executor, and you even messed that up. Like, they thought it was cruel, it was horrible. So he is actually, William Williams was the last person executed in Minnesota. So between 1906 and 1911, no one else was executed that we're aware of, at least legally. And it took them like that long to debate it, and it's still intact today that the death penalty is not allowed in Minnesota. At least last time I checked, like a few days ago. Something could have happened. But also, before Williams was to be hung, like kicked out, like dropped, you know what I'm saying, he said, "Gentlemen, you are witnessing an illegal hanging. I am accused of killing Johnny Keller." Yeah, he admitted it. "But he was the best friend I ever had, and I hope I meet him in the other world. I never had improper relations with him. I am resigned to my fate. Goodbye." And just that he mentioned, "I never had improper relations with him," kind of shows that maybe in the trial and why they wanted to give him the death penalty was due to him being gay, or they just did not like what was happening between the two men. It's just a weird thing. Like, honestly, today this case would have been handled so much more differently. For starters, there's no more hanging for death penalties that I'm aware of. I think you have to have a jury. I think. I'm not really big into the law. And like insanity and things that can alter your mind are actually decent defenses nowadays. Like you have to have a proper state of mind. Again, I'm not super good with the legal stuff. But I don't know if emotional insanity is the same as just regular insanity. Who knows? But that was the story of Johnny Keller. And unfortunately, like the last case with Delia Green, there was more known about the killer than actually the victim. Because I look at a list of cases, and the one I chose was Johnny Keller, and it says Johnny Keller, and you can like click on it, and it should bring you to their page. When you click on it, it brings you to not Johnny Keller's page, it brings you to William Williams' page. It's his page, because he's more famous than the actual victim. And that's probably solely because he was the last person executed like legally in Minnesota. But anyway, that is it for today. I hope the quality turns out a bit better. I see that my face looks worse on the phone, but that's okay. You're here for the story, not for my face. And I hope you like it, and maybe I can throw in music this time with the new experiment, because I tried it last week. It was too freaking loud. I'm like, why is it so loud? Why? It's supposed to be background music. But we'll see what I can do. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next week. Bye.